Hey everybody, thanks so much for joining us today. I hope the content encourages you and helps you build your faith. Now enjoy the message.
This morning I titled the message, What Do I Do? What do I do? If you've ever gone through anything tough, a season, maybe that's a little bit more difficult, maybe sometimes you have found yourself asking the question, what do I do now? You know, knowing what to do and doing what you know to do are often two totally different things. Knowing what to do, but actually knowing how to do what you know to do are actually two totally different things. So if you're going through something challenging, or maybe you're coming in through a tough season, or things aren't looking normal, and you're wondering, what do I do now? Then this morning, I believe God has a special word just for you. I believe He can speak to your heart. The strategy is often, don't freak out. When you find yourself in the middle of a situation that's difficult, often you're telling yourself, please don't freak out. Your kid comes home, you know they did something they shouldn't have done, and you're telling yourself, don't lose it on them. You know, the strategy is often, don't freak out. I know I got to have peace in my heart, but this is crazy. I don't know if I can handle the chaos. Don't freak out. So we tell ourselves over and over the same thing. Keep calm and carry on. They even make memes about it, right? Keep calm and carry on. But often the reality or the temptation that we face is to freak out. Kind of like the time about 5 years ago, I was driving in the car with my friend. He had a really nice, fast car. He was showing it to me, and we're driving down the interstate in Dallas. We're going along, and all of a sudden I hear this sound, the bzzz, the bzzz. You know what I'm talking about. The sound that alerts you or notifies you that there is a monster living up under your dash of your car, and there's no way to get out of your car. And so we're driving along, and you just hear zzz, and you know there is something down there. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, a wasp comes flying out from behind the dash. Now, we're two grown men driving a fast car, at least, I mean, we were going the speed limit, not, okay? And we're just cruising down the interstate, and there's a wasp flying around our car because we live in Texas, and it's so incredibly hot. This thing, you know what it's doing. It's hitting every hot window in the car except for the open windows. And it's just hitting it, and every time it hits the window, it gets more mad and more mad and more mad. Now, I know what you're thinking, like, take care of the problem, solve the problem, keep calm, solve the problem, right? So I'm taking my shoes off in the car. We're throwing shoes at it. We're swatting it with a magazine that's in the side of the seat, and we are just doing everything we possibly can, but this wasp is getting so mad. And finally, I turn to my buddy, and I say, pull the car over! And he pulls the car over on the side of an interstate. And instantly, we both flung our doors open, and we take off running out of the car. And I get to the back of the car, and I'm like, what are you doing here, bro? You're supposed to be, like, fighting the wasp. He's like, what do you do? I'm like, I had to run. And we're standing on the side of the interstate while a tiny little wasp occupies our car. And in that moment, I know, you're thinking, like, you're a grown man, right? You're a grown man. Why were you so afraid of a wasp? The strategy is to keep calm. But the temptation, oftentimes, is to freak out. But see, what you don't know about me and my backstory is when I was in high school, I got stung by a wasp. And one night I got stung by a wasp. I was sitting at home, and about 20 minutes later, my hands started to itch. My arms started to itch. My upper arm started to swell, and it started crawling up my neck into my face until I turned into a full-on hot air balloon. Next thing I know, I am driving, being taken to the hospital, drinking Benadryl through a straw, going to the hospital because I'm having an allergic reaction. And so that past experience that I had in my life was completely informing my present response. Why am I standing on the side of the interstate? Because of a little wasp? Because of something that had happened to me along the way that caused me to let go of the strategy, to throw all caution and all reasonable insight and experience, all went out the window for the sake of freaking out. You know, sometimes in life when we're going through stuff, it drags some things up. It drags some things we've been through in the past, and our past starts to inform our present decision. And no matter how good we thought our strategy was about how we would handle it, we find ourselves reverting back, doing things that aren't actually helping the problem and quite possibly are making it worse. You know, the problem is this. Often when we're afraid of the fight that we're up against, or often when we don't have a strategy or a very good strategy, it makes it very difficult to win. You know, I know some of you may be experiencing some things in this season and going through some different challenges. Life does not look normal for you. Things have changed quite quickly. And what I want to challenge you with this morning is this idea that God has a strategy to help you win your battles. You see, it's not if you're going to go through something in life. We all know that. It's not if, but it's how you're going to go through it when it comes about. There's a verse in the Bible, I love it, John chapter 16, verse 33. It says this, "In this world you will have trouble." Jesus himself is saying this. He says, you're going to have trouble in this life. But he says these encouraging words. He says, but take heart, because I've already overcome the world. Do you know that when you're going through something, we actually can be encouraged because there is someone who came and did something. His name is Jesus. And he came and did something so great that he gives the opportunity for you and I to stand at a place of victory, having already come through something that we didn't even know we had the power to come through. And so oftentimes what happens is this: when we face our battles or we face our challenges, we often forget that we've already won. Well, we often forget that even though we gave our life to the Lord when we were 9, or even though we went to church a few times in this last year, we've been watching online, we often forget that we're no longer fighting for victory. You see, I'm standing on the back of the car on the side of the interstate trying to gain victory back over my car, trying to gain victory over the wasp. You see, sometimes we're like that. We spend so much of our time fighting for victory that we forget that we're actually already standing in a place of victory. 1 Corinthians chapter 15 and verse 57, it says this: thanks be to God. We should be so grateful. We should be so excited because of all that God has done. He says, thanks be to God, for the victory has been given to us. You know, he doesn't say, go earn it. He doesn't go, figure it out. He doesn't say, I hope you make it to the other side. Here you go. No, he says the victory has been earned, which means you're not fighting for victory in your life. You're fighting from a place of victory. And there's a big difference, because often when we fight for victory, here's what happens. We're fighting to get somewhere. Our hope is that if we try hard enough or do enough or pray enough or say all the right things, that one day we'll get there. But see, when you fight from victory, here's the deal. You don't have to fight to get somewhere because you already are somewhere. There's a big difference. And I believe that the Lord can help you this morning. He can give you a word as we read in his word. He can give you something that can encourage you in the times that you need it the most. He can give you a strategy that even before you don't know what to do in a tough situation, you can walk into it with full confidence and full assurance that you're not walking alone, that the Lord will help you and that the Lord will be with you. You know, when I was a teenager, I was 12, 13, 14, 15 years old, I played MLB. Missouri League Baseball, right, Luke? Kansas City, Missouri. All right, I played Missouri League Baseball, and I was actually pretty good, okay? I played left field. I played for several years there, and I was really, really good. I was really proud of myself until I realized that the reason I was really good was because the kids weren't strong enough to hit it into outfield. And so I had spent years thinking baseball's my thing, and I had these dreams and this vision about how I was going to play and what my life would look like and how rich I would become, until all the kids on the team got strong enough to actually hit the ball to me. You know, but the thing about baseball is this. In baseball, you have to watch out for two kinds of pitches. The first kind of pitch is a curveball. You got to watch out for a curveball. It's got a spin on it. And if you're not expecting it, it will take its toll on you in a way that could actually kind of humiliate you. I remember standing up to bat a few times, and you'd stand in the batter's box, everybody's watching, and you're just whiffing. You're just taking some swings at some of these pitches that you're just wondering, how was I even supposed to hit that? But it's not the curveballs that you just have to watch out for. Everybody knows about the curveball. It's the knuckleball. You see, the knuckleball is thrown in such a way that there's no spin on it. And they've shown, and you can watch videos on YouTube if you get bored in this quarantine. And they've actually shown how a knuckleball is so susceptible to the wind or the different changes in the climate that it's going through. And so, in other words, if you're the batter in the box and you get thrown a knuckleball, it's incredibly unpredictable, which is why you can watch a Major League Baseball player who gets paid millions of dollars a year to stand up in the batter's box and look like ridiculous because he doesn't know how to hit it, right? It's unpredictable. You see, the thing about the knuckleball is this. Sometimes in life, we face some curveballs and some knuckleballs that come our way. Bobby Mercer of the New York Yankees, he used to say, Trying to hit a knuckleball is like trying to eat Jell-O with chopsticks. It's just that unpredictable. And maybe something you're going through right now, you feel like you're trying to eat Jell-O with chopsticks. You're trying to face it, and your strategy's not working, and what worked before isn't working this time, and you're wondering, how do I do this? You know, the key to our success here is this. You have to know what to do in those moments when you don't know what to do. You see, baseball players, they practice. They prepare for a moment. They know what they're going to do when the ball comes flying their direction. And sometimes in life, we get caught by surprise because of the curveballs and the knuckleballs that are thrown our way. And our challenge is this. Standing in a place of victory, we have to figure out, how do I stand in place in such a way that no matter what comes my way, I will come out the other side, not weaker, but stronger. Not helpless, but full of hope and full of strength. There's a guy in the Bible, his name is Jehoshaphat. And this morning in 2 Chronicles, we're going to read his story. But before we do, I want to tell you, oftentimes when we don't know what to do, there are some ways that we tend to respond. The first way we often respond is to freeze. Have you ever been in one of those situations? Maybe a college student, maybe a pretty girl was asking you on a date, and all of a sudden you had no idea what to say. You may be cocky and proud and feeling like the king of the hill, you know, and then all of a sudden she walks up and you lose every word. Parents, have you ever been in a situation with your kids and you were just confident, you knew how to respond in the moment your kids walked in the house and you just lost all sense of direction? What do I say? They asked me a really difficult, hard question. And you just find yourself in those situations in life sometimes where you freeze, where you feel paralyzed or you feel stuck. You know, the problem is this. Sometimes when we don't know what to do, we freeze. And we find ourselves freezing, feeling stuck and paralyzed. And the temptation then becomes to do nothing about the situation. But what we learn is this, that when we freeze in challenging situations, it doesn't actually help the situation. It just compounds the problems even more. And so we learn that freezing is not an option. We're going to read about that in the story with Jehoshaphat this morning. But another option that we have when we don't know what to do is to flee or run. And so a tiny little wasp is flying inside of our car and we take off running, and that doesn't solve the problem either. You see, sometimes we run away from situations, but what happens is this. It only prolongs the pain. When we run, instead of face it head on or choose to fight, what happens is this. We start fleeing, and it only prolongs the problem, and it perpetuates the pain that we may be experiencing. There was a New York City bus driver. And this, I read this in the news a while back, and this New York City bus driver, he was driving his daily bus route, but some things were going on at home. And if you've ever been on the road driving, you know that sometimes you can be driving along, and as you're driving, you're just thinking a lot. He began to think about all the things that were going on in his life. He was thinking about, his relationship with his wife wasn't the best. They were going through some marital challenges. He was having some financial issues on top of that. And so he's driving along, and he doesn't know what to do about all the problems that he's facing. And so the news article read, and it said that he stopped the bus in the middle of the city. And he told everybody on the bus, get out. So everybody got off the bus, and he got back in his seat, and he started driving. And he kept driving, and he kept driving, until all the way from New York City, he hit the beaches of Florida. His boss, his company was like, where is this guy? Where did he go? They couldn't find him for 4 days, and they found him sitting on a beach in Florida. Sounds quite nice, especially if you're fleeing from New York. That would be a great place to go. But the reality was this. He got home and he told his boss, he said, I was just going through some stuff, and I didn't know what to do. The only thing I knew to do was to leave, was to run away. But the problem was this. When he got home, the challenges that he was facing when he left were still waiting for him right there. Sometimes we flee, sometimes we freeze. But I believe the Bible, as we read Jehoshaphat this morning, is going to teach us that there's a way that we can fight. As we sing in the song, this is how I fight my battles. That God is actually ready, willing, and equipped to give us everything that we need to fight our battles in such a way that we can come out stronger on the other side. I've been in 1.5 fights in my life. Don't laugh at me. I didn't win any of them, and I realized quite quickly that losing is not fun. Losing isn't fun, and that you have to have a strategy. But here's the catch. If you go take self-defense classes, they're only good if you take them before you actually go, right? And so you don't think, oh man, I just lost a fight. Now I need to go practice so I'm ready for the fight I just had. No, actually you do the opposite. You prepare for the fight ahead of time so that when it comes your direction, you're ready for it. And so we read the story this morning of Jehoshaphat in 2 Chronicles chapter 20. He's the king of God's people. He followed, one of the few kings who actually followed God's way. He found himself up against a battle, and we're going to read it this morning in 2 Chronicles chapter 20, verse 2. Some people came out and told Jehoshaphat they had some bad news for him. They said, a very vast army is coming against you from Edom, from the other side of the Dead Sea. It's already in Hazezon Tamar. And alarmed, Jehoshaphat resolved to inquire of the Lord, and he proclaimed a fast for all of Judah. The people of Judah, they came together to seek help from the Lord. Indeed, they came from every town in Judah to seek him. I love what it says about the king. You see, the king is the head of all the people. If anybody knows what to do in a tough situation, it should be the king. And it says that he got some bad news, and on the inside, he felt the alarm bells going off. You know, the strategy to stay calm has this decisive moment about it when something comes up against it that threatens its very existence. You have to make a decision in that moment. What am I going to do? And the king of Judah stood up before the people, and he said, here's what we're going to do. We're going to inquire of the Lord. We're facing a vast army that's bigger than us, a battle that we're not going to be able to fight on our own. So we're going to have to do something different this time. We're going to have to look to the Lord for his help. And here's what happens. You know, often in our lives, we think all the leaders, our dads, the great leaders of the country, the people that are at our job, our bosses, that they always know the right answer. We think Pastor Luke, he knows exactly how to lead a church through a global pandemic because he's done it before. No. The challenge is this. We often look at the people who are over us and leading us, and we think they always know what to do. They always have the right answer. But I would challenge you in this, like Jehoshaphat. He's the king. He's in a situation that's tough. It's not that they always know what to do. It's that they know what they're going to do in the moments when they don't know what to do. That when they find themselves in a situation where everybody else is looking around saying, this is crazy. Have you read the news? And they're saying, yes, but there's something better. And it's not that they have the answers. It's that they know ahead of time what they're going to do in the moment when they need it the most. Here's what Jehoshaphat did. Jehoshaphat said, I'm going to look up. I'm going to inquire of the Lord. You know the greatest thing you could ever do in the midst of any difficult battle? You see, there is no magic key to life, but this is as close as it gets. The thing that you can do in the moment when you face a tough battle or a tough situation or some bad news or a vast army coming against you is to look up. The challenge is we often look down. Oftentimes, instead of looking up, we start looking down. We think because we don't have the answer, we don't know what to do, that we should just be full of embarrassment or shame, or that we're not as good as they are, or they just must have it better off than we do, and that's why their life is always so great. But the catch is this. Stop looking down and start looking up. Start looking up. Inquire of the Lord. Make a resolve before you ever find yourself in the middle of a tough situation. Make the decision that in that moment, when I'm lonely, I will look to the Lord. In the moment when I feel weak, I'm going to go to God because I don't know what to do, but I know that He will. And you make the decision before you ever find yourself in that situation to inquire of the Lord. Sometimes when people feel like looking down instead of looking up, they often think that their circumstances or their situations make them less than, make them not as strong or not as good as the people around them. But I would challenge the thought this morning with this. When you don't know what to do in a situation, that's not what makes you helpless. When you don't know what to do in a situation, it doesn't make you helpless. It actually postures you in a position to be very hopeful, to be very full of the strength and the confidence that God has helped me before and He will help me again. That God was with me then, He'll be with me now. That God was with me in the good times when I stood at the Ark Church at Sam Houston State University worshiping Him. That same God is right there with you in your living room, with your kids and your family and all of those around you as you worship together. And he's willing to help you. So the first thing we have to do in tough situations when we're facing a battle is to make the decision that we'll keep our eyes on the Lord no matter what. The second thing we have to do, and we learn from the story of Jehoshaphat, is to stand in the presence of God no matter what it takes. My sister, one of our, those classic pictures you take? My daughter just turned 1. We had her birthday last week, and she is the cutest human on the face of the planet. I don't care what you say. We took all these pictures in our house. It didn't matter that it was the middle of a quarantine. We set up the whole studio in the home. You would have thought 100 people were at the birthday party, but it was just the two of us and my daughter. So it didn't matter. But here's the thing. When my sister, she had those classic pictures you take of your kids. And there's this cute picture of my sister that hung on the wall for years at our house growing up. And she was in this really, nice dress that you only wore once. And, she's posing, she's smiling, she looks happy. But what people don't know when they stand looking at that picture is that actually underneath her dress, they had tied her to the chair. That she was so energetic and moving around, they couldn't get a good picture. And parents, they'll do anything at any cost to make sure they get that picture. And so underneath it all, she was strapped to the chair to hold her still. And when I think about that picture, I think about our lives sometimes. Just the temptation to be on the move. When a challenging situation comes our way or things happen at work or we go into the middle of a global pandemic, the challenge is standing still. And we read in Jehoshaphat, in 2 Chronicles, we read what Jehoshaphat did. He made the decision when things got tough, if calamity comes upon us, no matter what happens, whether the sword of judgment or plague or famine, here's what he says. He says, we will stand in your presence before this temple that bears your name, and we will cry out to you in our distress, and you will hear us and save us. I love what he says, and I think it's one of the most applicable things that you could ever find to help you with the situations that you're going through, and that is this, that when you find yourself in tough moments, make the decision that I am going to stand firm. I will stand right here in the middle of God's presence because I know it's his presence that's the only thing that can do anything about the situations in my life. It goes on in verse 15 to say this. That is what the Lord says to you. Do not be afraid or be discouraged because of this vast army. The strength that we get, that we need to be able to stand still in tough situations is this line right here. It says, for the battle is not yours, but God's. The battle is not yours, but God's. You're telling me, Clayton, that when things are hard, I'm just supposed to stand here and worship? Yes. Why? Because it's the best place you could ever be. The hardest time to stand still, to not be busy, to not try and fix it, is when you're going through tough stuff. You know what the best thing you could do? Is to stand still in the middle of God's presence. Don't stand there doing nothing. Stand there worshiping the Lord. The final thing this morning is this. Make the decision that before you don't know what to do, that when you find yourself in a situation where you don't know what to do, that you will worship with all of your heart. With all of your heart. Yeah, but Clayton, we're not, in the building at Sam Houston State. We're not at the Ark Church with all our people worship. Did you know you can worship no matter where you are? That the same God you worship in the room that I'm currently standing in is the same God who's with you in your home. He's the same God. The same songs we sing right here are the same songs that you can, believe it or not, find on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Music, you name it. Why? Because our God is good enough to know that when we worship him, things around us begin to shift. Things around us, the unpredictability of the situations we're going through, begin to find their peace and their strength and the shoring up of the details of all the problems that you don't know how to fix. Find their hope in their peace and their rest when you start to worship. So Jehoshaphat and his people are standing there, and they know that a vast army is coming against them. And they make the decision that right here in this moment, we're going to stand here and we're going to worship God. We're not going to sharpen our swords. We're not going to ready the chariots. We're going to stand right here with the Lord. As I think about that, in verse 22, he says this, as they began to sing and praise, the Lord did something. The Lord set ambushes against the men of Ammon and Moab and Mount Seir, who were invading Judah, and they were defeated. In the middle of their biggest battle, they stood there and worshiped, and God fought the battle for them. They walk out onto the field the next day and find that the armies had turned themselves against one another. And while they worshiped, God fought the battles on their behalf. If you're going through something, I want to challenge you that when you start singing, it increases your success. When you begin singing praise to the Lord, it increases your success. And that when you start praising God, it's actually the very tool that God has given you to activate the power that you need to come through to the other side. You know, a while back, I'm a youth pastor. I went to a volleyball game at Willis High School down the road. And it was pouring down rain, and my wife and I were going to this game, and Texas and the humidity and the rain isn't good on a girl's hair. And so I was a good husband, and I dropped her off at the front door. And inevitably, you know how it is. When it's pouring down rain, you can't find a parking spot. And so I parked way off in the back in this field, muddy field. And, I had this split-second decision I had to make. I looked next to me, and it's the decision that every real man has to make. You know what I'm saying? So I'm sitting in the seat, looking at the seat next to me. My wife had so politely, graciously left the umbrella in the seat for me. And I look at the umbrella, and I think, nah. And I get out of the car, and like every man, I took off running, right? Who needs an umbrella when you can just outrun the rain? And so I took off running. I run into the school, and I run into the gym, and they got the air conditioning pumping in there, and you're sopping wet. Now you smell like the rain. You smell terrible. You don't want to sit next to anybody or talk to anybody. I'm sitting there thinking about how bad I smell and how miserable I feel and how cold it is. And we walk out, and when we walk out, it's still pouring down rain. And I realized something in that moment. There's got to be a better way. And I looked at my wife and I said, honey, there's got to be a better way. And she said, there is. It's called an umbrella. And I said, honey, it's in the car. You see, what had happened was I had already made the decision before I ever even left the gym that I wasn't going to have what I needed when I needed it the most. And so here I go, tailing across the parking lot through the mud and the rain, getting even more wet because I made the decision before I ever even went in the building, that when it came critical point in time in my life, when I was going to need something, I wasn't going to have it. Knowing what to do in the challenging situations of your life starts before you ever even find yourself in the middle of a challenging situation. You see, there's something unique about an umbrella. I'm going to open this up inside a building. Don't freak out. You see, if I stand underneath the protection of this umbrella, it protects me from the things that are coming down against me. So all I had to do is take the umbrella and begin to walk through the parking lot, and all the things that I was experiencing on the inside wouldn't have happened if I had only done outside what it was that was best to help me in that situation. Life is the same way. Before you ever find yourself in a challenging situation, I want to challenge you to look up. I want to challenge you to stand still underneath the protection of God's blessing and God's favor in your life. And the way you do that, the way you put a covering over your life, like an umbrella covers you in the rain, is you begin to worship and you begin to praise. You know that when life gets tough, you're going to make the decision to trust in the Lord and look up no matter what happens. And you see, when I'm standing under here, what happens is this. The rain that is hitting on the outside doesn't hit me the same way. All of a sudden, I'm not fighting for victory anymore. I'm fighting from a position of victory because the only water that's hitting me is the water that's up underneath my feet. If that's true of an umbrella, how much more true is that of God in your life? That when you're facing a difficult situation, that He will cover you, He will protect you, He will see you through. Because of the blood of Jesus, you're standing in a position of victory today. And the battle that you're facing is not like the battle that you see the world around you facing. I want to pray for you this morning.
Hey everybody, thanks again for joining us. We believe God has something great for your life, and we hope this message encouraged you to take the next step in your faith. Have a great week.